have a black dog who once was well fed. I have a black dog who used to be.
We laugh, we cry, we write poetry, and the world smiles. Welcome to For the Love of Words at the ECAT Studios in Northeastern Massachusetts. Thank you to everybody watching at home and in our studio audience. As always, a big thank you to the ECAT staff, the Easton Shoveltown Cultural District, and the Ames Free Library for supporting poetry and the arts in Easton and the surrounding area. Our format tonight will include a Q&A and performances with the poet Lucci and with musicians Tony Brown and Steve Cafaro. The poet Lucci I met at the Boston Poetry Slam at the Cantab Lounge in Cambridge, and it has been a delight to watch this young man develop as an artist over the years. He is a hip-hoppin' hippie poet, an aspiring comedian, and his poetry is cross-cultural and thought-provoking. Ladies and gentlemen, the poet Lucci.
My name is Lucci. Not to be confused with Gucci or mistaken for Hoochie. I am a man with a duty that might eventually force someone to sue me. If anybody can prove me wrong, I beg of you to prove me. I've never been shy to admit I was wrong, just as long as we don't argue like a radio playing the same songs. My name has 5 letters, L-U-C-C-I. Each and every letter has a purpose I go by. Even though I wisely know I'm not the wisest, I can honestly say that I tried to be wise. The first letter is L, stands for listen, because I choose to listen to blues of the smitten who've been written into non-existence. I also listen to indifference and the happy. I don't care if their stories are scrappy, snappy, or even sappy, or if the nature is a major wager full of danger. You is to understand. Whether you're a woman or a man, I want to understand chances of circumstances getting better or worse. Did you get the job letter? Or were you cursed with a hearse? Understand doesn't mean justify, but they can let you know while they will or won't testify. Letter number 3 happens to be C, stands for care. I care about anyone and everyone, anything and everything. A slob who's a con man looking down on a slob for a regular job? Ignorantly full of hate and doctor with every play in the way of debate? The love of my life or the first to pull a knife? Next letter, another C, consider. I have sedational consideration for the suffering who continue to buffer just to benefit another and care less at the expense of a slave mother. I have consolational consideration for an animal or human, born to the shores of life they never asked for, taught from the core, close the door on the poor, keep asking for more and more. Letter number 5 is I, inquire. I inquire about the fire and ice within the tire, the wire, the dyer, put it on a flyer. I don't care, whatever it is, I still inquire for my knowledge to grow higher. Racially, socially, sexually, religiously, politically, historically, economically, even futuristically, I still inquire. Everybody has a story. Here's mine. Southwest Detroit till I was 14. Picked on and bullied just for being me. Awkward and shy as well as mad and sad. Unnecessary drama at home to feel even more alone. Experiencing images of interracial harmony until I kissed a different race but couldn't do so comfortably. Forced to look over my shoulder by people I loved and hated by hatred I thought was outdated. Down south to Tennessee and Georgia. At the time, for me, compared to the D, I wanted the blacks were really free. But now I'm in the bean where I see bigotry is everywhere you can possibly stare. But too many people don't seem to care. So now that I'm older and developed a mind, I realize I can't go back in time for justice mountains to climb, not only for racism, but sexism. All my life experiencing images of women who claim nice guys finish last. That's because we couldn't get past a master of lying and conniving who wishes to cast them into a role of a hoe with the week-to-week limited cast. Homophobia is a toxicity that's in simplicity, an enormity and surpasses perplexity. I see a society full of judgment, whether it comes to Superstitions of politicians with oppositions to peaceful and loving compositions? Or individuals with animosity toward the generosity of those from another mother, and even some from the same mother? By the way, as I write this, infinite innocence are having infinite innocence taken away just for the taking. Every system, every country somehow corrupt and broken. By no means am I sane, but compared to the needy and greedy in the towers of power, I feel like a token. So I'm telling you, I have thoughts and wishes like a door revolving around peace and love, a solution with no institution of a revolver to evolve to this conclusion. I'm listening, understanding, caring, considering, inquiring. Not to be confused with Gucci or mistaken for Hoochie, my name is Lucci.
Okay, Lucci, you answered my first question in your poem. I've never heard a name poem before, and it was done extremely well. When Rich gave a promo, he said L period U period C period C period I period. You told us what they stand for. Is your first name or your last name Lucci?
It's a complicated story.
Oh.
I was adopted before I was even born.
Wow.
So my birth given name is actually Glenn Allen Furman.
Wow.
But I found out when I found my biological mother several years ago that my great-grandfather came to America from Sicily, but was illiterate and couldn't read or write. And the name was Lucci, actually. That was his surname.
Okay.
But America kind of changed his name to a German name, Lutz, L-U-T-Z. So whether I would have been adopted or not, I would have had an English-German name. And I never knew what I was until I found my biological mom several years ago. So when you're adopted and then you find out what your bloodline is, it's kind of like an extra piece of pride you have for yourself because you actually have more of an identity than you used to have.
Wow.
So that was the original reason to bring the name back. But then I was like, well, there's a lot of Luccis out here. Like, there's Luccis everywhere in different shapes and sizes and forms. So I figure, you know, the kind of person that I strive to be, as well as what my art tries to do, I wanted to give it an acronym that would just give people an idea, okay, no, this is this Lucci. There's no other Lucci like this one. So every time I give it to people, I never just do it regular name Lucci. I always do all caps with the periods because it stands for something.
Wow. Unbelievable, unbelievable opening performance of the poem, an unbelievable story behind the poem. Terrific.
Thank you.
Tell us about your T-shirt.
Yeah, it's March for the Homeless, 2015. There's some wonderful people that organized. I feel really bad about this, but there's a gentleman that was in Ireland that actually started the March for Homeless idea and completely networked through Facebook. And so I'll show you if you like.
Show us the back for the audience at home.
That's the back of it. And you can see it says on the top, Boston Spoken Word Flash Mob.
Could you explain what a flash mob is?
Okay. Flash mob is basically a type of performance that the people doing it have it planned, but they'll go to an area, whether it's one person or several, they'll go to an area that they've designated to do the performance, and without telling anybody, they'll just start performing. And it's like a flash mob in front of a bunch of people, and whatever happens, happens, you know. And the original point of this particular one was a spoken word flash mob is Ja D is the architect of the open mic in Boston, If You Can Feel It, You Can Speak It, every second Thursday. And it was originally her poem that we all memorized, and it's about homelessness. And so we all memorized it, and we went to different places. We went to Faneuil Hall, we went to downtown, you know, we performed at several different places. So we were asked as a spoken word flash mob group, with that being what our piece is about, to perform a couple of times at this March for Homeless 2015.
So,
You know.
at what age did you first call yourself to the public? At what age did you call yourself an artist? Or a poet, either one.
Well, I always consider myself a poet because my family was very supportive about that for a long time. My mom actually signed me up for this thing called the International Society of Poets. I didn't think my poetry was anything. I got invited to this show, and we got a plane ticket to go to Hollywood, and I read mine up in the minor section because I was just still 17. It was just amazing, and all these different poets were around. And Cantab Lounge was the first venue I consistently went to. Cantab consistently in 2011. And I found out this man's a friend of mine to this day, Christopher Kane.
Right.
I saw him at my Jamaica Plain Library branch showing where he did a reading. And I just remember seeing him, going to Cantab, and I saw poet after poet after poet, and I'm like, that's poetry too? That's poetry too? I'm like, I can do these things, or I can experiment, and I just find it very fun to just try and play with language and finagle different things.
I am hearing, for the love of words.
Cancer. Why do you exist? Why am I born with you? There is not an ounce of construction in you, only destruction. I take it back. You can be constructive on how you plot to invest our bodies with pain and suffering, organ by organ, and you do not discriminate. You make travel paths from our brains all the way down to our feet, as if not a bone or a muscle stands in your way. You play with our minds. We are dogs that tilt our heads when you do something we don't understand, like come back. Then we cower in the corner wondering why we are in trouble, what we did to deserve this. Your policy of no mercy is effective like a death sentence. One way or another, it's going to happen. Dragging bodies through stages of hell, wished only for afterlife. Don't look away when I'm talking to you. If you wish to end me one day, you look me in the eyes first. That's just like you, not a care in the world. You move your eyes like you relocate your most trusted destroyers. Throat, breast, bladder, lung, colon, kidney, prostate, pancreas, and too many more bricks of our most beloved walls. You are like a kid at the playground where the human anatomy is a jungle gym at your disposal and discretion. I'm glad you're having fun at our expense. One simple fact keeps me grounded, hopeful, peels away layers of the cynic you ripened inside me. You are not undefeated. You can be beaten. You can be overcome. You can be conquered. And it doesn't matter that you've won more battles than lost. What matters is just because you press the start button, that doesn't mean the game is rigged. People have a chance to beat you. The levels will get harder and harder because that's the way you like it. But you can still slip on that banana peel and land flat in remission. You don't like that word, remission, do you? Reminds you of all those times you cut and run. You staked the white flag because you knew you couldn't win. You felt as useless as the masses you've preyed on, and you felt less than a fraction of what we go through day by day simply after making yourself known. You even leech onto kids, making adults not enough to quench their thirst for cold blood. It's okay. You will always have an advantage. Your resources are everything inside and outside. Because unfortunately, we are hosts, born with the cruel and unusual parasite that you are. But you are not an unbreakable and you are not an untouchable. Your weakness is the knowledge you always have a chance at winning and losing. So keep us in hospitals, expose our scalps, pale our faces. That's why we started fighting, and we will never stop even if it kills us. We are not afraid of you anymore. As superior as you are just as capable of being humbled into your own corner of non-existence. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm not telling you should go. I'm not asking authorities to vacate you from my premises. I'm going to be the one to show you the door. I'm going to pray on you for a change. I'm going to put you in your rightful place, outside of me. Is there a problem with Eugene gently brushing his hand across LaToya's face? Would you say something is askew if Akeem embraces Molly's lips? How would you feel if Mrs. O'Reilly held hands with Mr. Chan? What would be the big deal of Dinesh dating Alice or Tommy instead of Pushpa or even Dhaval? Where would Giovanni be without his beloved Ishana? How can a Musa be denied her everlasting love of Gideon? Do many people frown upon Ming and her husband Salim? Who could fear the connection between Chief Nataya and his fair lady Jacqueline? would there be a riot if Paul fell in love with Leroy? At what point does Gabriella wanting to marry Stephanie become immoral? How does one find time for harshness aimed toward Juanita, formerly known as Juan? Why do some feel superior when compared to Samuel? Because he used to be Samantha. Does it really matter who we lust, as long as we love ourselves first? Does it really matter who we love, as long as they love us back? Does any of this really matter, as long as we are happy?
That was the sweet, hard, cutting Lucci, the poet. The young man that I met at the Boston Poetry Slam at the Cantab Lounge a number of years ago is not the young man anymore. Quite worldly. Thank you very much. Another round for Mr. Lucci. We are back. We will be hearing from musicians Tony Brown and Steve Cafaro. They have been all over New England, everywhere in between, points further, and everywhere they go, people love them. Not everybody knows why, but when you see them perform, I'm sure you'll agree. They're laughing in the background. They are wonderful, they are soulful, they are very, very original. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Brown and Steve Cafaro. Okay.
There was a day when you came to a river in your path with no clear way across. And then 4 stones offered themselves. There in the stream, the first, white as fish belly and so small. It said the way has no sense to it, but it leads forward in any case. The second, black as wood long submerged and slick as a suspect. It said, if you could risk believing that it offered solid footing, you would find yourself halfway across. Third was rusty skinned, top high and dry above the current. Solitary and distant. It mumbled a secret worth hearing, barely intelligible, but unchanging and true. Fourth lay below the surface, and it was no more than a shadow, holding a threat of tumbling and immersion. It urged and it coaxed. Venture, it said. Leap, it said. It said, come now, steady as you go. Far bank was so high and so green. There was sun on the high meadow, followed by moon on a high meadow. fell in love with it at once. From this side of the flood. It seemed a perfect place for dancing with wet feet, wet shoes and wet knees still knocking from the journey. And so it was. So we need to share real quick. You're the first people ever to hear that. We just put that together. It's a brand new piece. Ready? She burns sage at the root of her favorite tree and calls herself a priest. While in town they call her slut and worse, because she dares to love who and what and where she wants. On the nights of the full moon, the men and the women of that small town come out and they circle her stucco walls, because there's something in there that they need. And over there in front of the white church, on the green lawn, right under the nose of the fat pastor, she dances, without bending a blade of grass, because God finds her agreeable. And over there in front of the frat house, two men kiss. The dangerous drunken boys inside see it and decide to do nothing this time. That's a start. Two have begun to feel comfortable making public their own sacrament of the infinite. And my grandmother sniffs. Elderly, such a spindly word. The legs of that word don't begin to support me. Traded in her electric typewriter 2 years ago for a laptop. She writes the definitive poetry of our time between the innings of Cubs games. And she won't stop smoking. Ever. Swears that if she gets to heaven to find the clouds have been posted, she'll find another place to light up. Friends, beloved friend, the arms of God are nearly endless, but there you hang out at the end of one of them like a finger on a vast hand, and all that's asked of you is that you take what you feel and transmit it back to the heart. So make a living, make a life. Make love or make art. Adorn this world with the work of your soul, but do it yourself, because no one will do it for you. You are beautiful. Though in no conventional sense. And yes, the word is overused, but occasionally correct, as in full of beauty, with it spilling over your edges and into the street. I can see dictatorships dissolving in your wake as you pass through gray and dingy capitals of pain. The people rising up pastel behind you, their leaders bowing to pressure, opening gates and secret files, domestic spies throwing up their hands and flinging their headphones to the floor, questioning the rationale for listening in on drab conversations when you are possible, and you still walking, oblivious to what's happening, serene, humble, not even noting the turmoil that you cause, the drama, the financial panic. Because you don't see the bankers with their hands full of fraud running after you just to buy a glance. You don't see the drug dealers kneeling and begging their marks to try the addiction only they can satisfy. The warriors gnashing armor and wheeling missiles at each other regardless of uniform just to gain the ground where you might pass. And all the time, you still think you're nothing. You're ordinary as shattered silk, wasted as a second chance. All the time you're spilling over and the world slips on what you leave. And most of all, in all that roar and tumult, all that steady chaos, in all the following general disbelief that you are walking among us, you don't even think of me. Oh, what the heck. This is the Trinity Tango. I have a black dog who once was well fed. I have a black dog who used to be fat. Now he's meatless, he's weightless, a hard-beaten skin drum, heavy only with snarls and with dark eye shine. He jumps from the rug where he sleeps while I'm sleeping and lands in my bed, looking to chew me. I hate him. I love him. I own him. I fear him. I sing him a lullaby to get him to heel. C'est tout, it's French for that's all. Basta, basta, Italian for enough. I can't give you my heart, for my heart it's too tough. C'est tout, basta, that's all, that's enough. The mother, the father, the lovers, the brothers, the liars and smilers who've drained all the colors, who once red appetites are still salt on the wounds from the end of a cutlass one can scarcely imagine. They come to my bedside, push me to the floor. I speak to their shadows, cast my one good spell. C'est tout, it's French for that's all. Basta, basta, Italian for enough. I won't give you my soul, for my soul it's too rough. C'est tout, basta, that's all, that's enough. Did I ever believe that this could be easy? Did I ever believe that this could be wished away? Did I ever believe it could become dust, or wind, or ghost story, or fable? Or forgotten? I awake in the morning, or even the evening. There's breakfast or supper. There's something to do. I stand up, I move, I don't see the dog. If there's a question to be answered here, I know what to say. C'est tout, it's French for that's all. Basta, basta, Italian for enough. I can't give up my heart, for my heart it's too tough. C'est tout, basta, that's all, that's enough. C'est tout, it's French for that's all. Basta, basta, Italian for enough. I can't give you my heart, for my heart it's too tough. C'est tout, basta, that's all. That's enough. Len says there's a sea of garbage in the Central Pacific. And seal pups on the beaches there play with tampon applicators, swallow them, get blocked up, and then they die. Just above us on the beach is a dead seabird. I'll say it's a gull because that's the only seabird I know by name. It's probably as soft as it looks, but I won't touch it. Death needs to be kept at arm's length, just beyond my fingertips. It needs to stay out there, far away from here. There's no need for me to know what killed that bird. I'll walk the beach and pick up smooth stones, flip the flat ones over the surface of the water 2, 3, maybe 5 times until they sink at last to safety on the bottom, where I can imagine they'll rest on clean sand. There's no plastic there among the scallops and the horseshoe crabs that will live forever on the bottom of that perfect harbor that shines and ripples today with the slight breeze that heralds an approaching storm. And we're so glad we made it to the island ahead of the wind and the rain. We may sleep through it tonight and get up tomorrow and read poems to smiling faces on the bluff above the beach. The gull, the stones, the sand, full of white shards I will not speak of again. Thanks.
We are here with musicians, singer-songwriters, Tony Brown and Steve Cafaro. And listening to your music begged this overwhelming question. How do you decide what type of music you want to play? Because you play so many styles so well. So how do you pick what you're going to do on any given, like tonight?
Dice. You know, there's two sides to that. There's the writing piece, which is essentially read a poem and Faro or the rest of the guys in the band decide what goes with it. Or they play a piece of music, I reach into my folder and I pull out a poem. On a given night, it's just whatever's striking our given fancy as to what we're going to play. I wish we knew. We don't have a good answer. We talk about this all the time, actually.
I tell Tony how his poems make me feel.
Well, that would be the crux of whether it's poetry or the music, how it would come
So
together.
is your music basically improv? Is he reading something?
Not usually. We have pieces that we improv, or there's sometimes where I might do something a little different. But in general, we'll actually write parts of everything.
Yeah, these are all written out. What you heard tonight is pretty much all written out.
Right.
You said 9 years. I thought it was longer than that when I think at Main Street Cafe in Sean Thiel's venue, I think that's probably where I saw you first, and I think you called Steve the Kid. And he was a kid. He was a kid. That was only 9 years ago?
I didn't realize it was the same person you called him the Kid.
It's going to be 9 years in September since our first show. Yeah.
And I was looking up Duende and Google Duende, and I get 4 different, from gnome to inspiration.
Yeah.
to a magnetic attraction, or so. So what does Duende mean to you, and what is the Duende Project?
Well, the Duende Project is what we do, or us and the other guys, because we also work with a drummer, Chris O'Donnell, and another guitarist, Chris Lawton, who's sort of also been our engineer and producer and taskmaster from the beginning.
We just keep bringing people into the fold.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
Do you
the
ever
name
get,
of
do
the
you ever
group?
get rid of people?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
the name of the group.
It's
It's
not
not
yet,
yet,
but-
and
I thought you were changing the world or something, and that you are. But
well, no, I mean, we had a long discussion when we first set out to put a name on it, because originally it was just we went out and we did a show, and then we said, let's keep doing this. We need a name, and so Duende came up because I'm a huge fan of Garcia Lorca, who wrote a huge essay about the Duende in the sense of that dark spirit that inhabits flamenco and stuff, and we kind of looked at each other and said, okay, that works.
And flamenco was one of the definitions.
Yeah.
Flamenco music is very important to both of us. We've listened to, I've been a fan for a long time. He listens to a ton of flamenco, and the spirit that you hear in a great Cante Hondo flamenco piece is called Duende, when they touch that sort of central part.
It's like the way a lot of musicians will refer to something having soul.
Yeah.
They say it has
soul-
duende,
soul,
it has a lot of
yeah, that was
passion.
one of the
you know.
definitions.
A
Yeah.
painter can have duende. You know.
Exactly.
Great.
You guys paint?
No.
Yeah, no, you sing, you write, you perform, you never know.
No. Now I barely play music.
And I barely speak.
But with your barely playing music and barely speaking, which we think is wonderful, what are some of the places that you've performed at?
Wow. That's a long list. We've been a lot of different places.
We've been really lucky to be a part of a lot of cool things.
things.
I tried to pick out a few to talk about,
Yeah.
and then I said, no, I can't do that because the list, there's too many pages.
I mean, we've gotten, I think a couple things have been really great. We've played everywhere from Portland, Maine to Washington, D.C. Over the years. And there have been some experiences that have been really terrific. We played the Mass Poetry Festival. We played last year and this coming year. We were the opening act of the White Plains Jazz Festival in White Plains, New York. We opened for the great performance artist Laurie Anderson. We've played with all kinds of different people and great people and combined and collaborated and done all kinds of stuff. And
We did the UPI, the Jazz Archives.
oh yeah, we're in there's an archive at Worcester Polytech Institute called the Jazz History Database. You can search it out. There's an entire section on the history of poetry combined with jazz, and we have a piece in that. We're in that. We have a piece in the Performance Poetry Preservation Project that's being started up, and so we've been doing this a while, and we've got a lot of pieces in various places and stuff.
You are highly documented in anthology.
We are. We are.
You realize now you can't hide.
Right.
No, we know that. We know that. Yeah.
Can I assume Steve just came from work, or your costumer has different things in mind that I
Right.
don't relate to?
No, he dresses like this all the time. So.
Other than musicians, my biggest inspiration in life has always been James Spader. So this is just the product of.
He's not kidding.
Oh, I didn't think in an interview you would be saying something that you would be kidding about. On the line of inspiration, what are some of your inspirations, either from when you first got started or more recently? Because sometimes it changes.
For me, from a poetry standpoint, the first poets I ever became really
I don't even know if I know this.
enthralled with. I mean, I've been publishing poetry since I was 9, and I'm now 55. But the first major poets I remember reading were, I can remember A.E. Housman. I was a huge fan of A.E. Housman's. I actually just did a feature recently where I did nothing but A.E. Housman poems. Robert Graves, who I don't think a lot of people know, British poet. And then shortly after that, I met some very famous folks when I was like 13, 14, thanks to the kind agency of a student teacher, and I met Robert Bly, and I met Etheridge Knight, and I met Galway Cannell, and I met Sonia Sanchez, and that's kind of where the ball started rolling, was in there. And then now, I mean, if I was going to point at somebody I read all the time now, Rilke. I read a lot of Rilke. I'm very fond of that. New poets, new books. Claudia Rankine's Citizen. It's an amazing book. I just got that. I just got an anthology of hip-hop influenced poets called The Breakbeat Poets. It's really terrific. So I'm inspired by a lot of stuff.
Now, you said you're not much of a musician, but is the voice trained? The voice came across really.
I sang in high school and
you
stuff
must have
like that.
you must have
so,
acted
yeah.
too, because you
No,
you
not
do
really. I've done a little bit of
you
like
do the
high
accent.
school theater, but not really.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So not a trained voice, just a great one by nature.
Well, thanks, but just luck, I guess. What about your inspirations, Faro?
Enough about my voice. Let's see, poetry. Tony would be the only poet I could name.
Is he your ride? Is he your ride back? That's how it works, right?
He is my meal ticket for gigs. Let's see, music. It would be depend on what instrument. In general, film composers are my idols. Hans Zimmer, Philip Glass, a gentleman by the name of Clint Mansell. Philip Glass would definitely be the biggest piano inspiration. And then for guitar, it would range between the just plethora of jazz inspirations from, ancient to modern. Martin Taylor being probably the biggest one of everyone. And then Paco de Lucia for flamenco. Yeah. You don't get much better when you talk flamenco.
Yeah.
And then you don't get to see it at all today, but for bass, it'd be a range of eccentric jazz and funk performers. So.
Well, that's evident in what we saw for performance.
Yeah.
I think you were playing bass years ago.
Yep.
And what other?
Yeah, this started out, it was supposed to be, Tony had one series of poems he wanted bass for, and he didn't want conventional, just bass. He wanted some weird stuff and experimental, and then we were going to do that, play a handful of shows, and then go our separate ways. And
Didn't work.
I loved it. For me, this was just too cool and interesting.
He just kept hanging around.
I was like, I'll just start studying more and more instruments.
Do you do more than that?
I'll say so. Yeah. What instruments do you play?
I do electric and upright bass. I did piano, nylon string guitar, electric guitar, violin, mandolin. I'll cover them all.
And
Keyboards.
are you professionally taught or taking classes? Or are you self-taught?
It would be a variety of private lessons, tutoring with college professors, very little college, like college courses. As a lot of multi-instrumentalists, I have severe ADD. So I can't do classrooms.
Well,
but I'll find a professor and just go to their house.
Is it fair to say that every artist has ADD?
I would assume at least some.
Some emotional disturbance somewhere?
I used to have a lot to say about that, but I forgot what it was.
So yeah, it would all be trained in one sense or another.
Right. I have a question. I meant to ask Tony this a while back. What is the funniest thing that has ever happened when you're on stage? That it was enough to disturb your playing or interrupt a little or make you laugh or throw you off key?
For us together,
Either way,
or just
because you have this range of stories. And I was always wondering, well, what's the funniest one? Because they're all funny.
I mean, in retrospect, it wasn't funny at the time. But the story that I tell people sometimes about the worst gig I ever did, I won't say where it was somewhere in Massachusetts, not one of the regular venues, was I did a poetry reading at a Rotary Club luncheon way back when, and the guy introducing me started to introduce me to a group who really were not all that thrilled to be hearing poetry. He started to introduce me. He had a seizure. While introducing me, fell to the ground, had to be taken off the stage. I was like, oh my God, is he going to be okay? He says, oh, he does this all the time. And then the guy just grabbed the mic and say, and now Tony Brown, in front of the audience. And I was like, really? I was like, really? Really? And they were like, you want me to, I mean, shouldn't we check on Hank? And it was like, oh no, he's fine. He does this all the time. As they're carrying him out, I'm like, oh my God.
Tough act to follow.
So yeah, I think I read 3 poems and then left.
And did you run? You ran out, or you just graced?
No, I just left. I just left. The room was
Seems like
pretty.
a mess.
The room was pretty empty by that point. They weren't really all that thrilled to have a poet. I don't quite know what I was doing there. So, but That was, in retrospect, that was hysterical, but at the time it didn't feel like it. Yeah.
And you've since checked in on Hank, or you found out, or?
Hank was fine. He had epilepsy and he had seizures periodically. It wasn't the first time. They were familiar with it. We're not still in touch, but it was an interesting experience. It was an interesting experience. It was 2 days after the Gore-Bush election, and I walked into a room where everybody was really politically not where I was.
Do you
that?
Do you think that had anything to do with the seizure?
No. No, I think the seizure was its own animal. I think, yes.
What, for either of you, what do you love best about live performing? I mean, I know you do studio work, you do special projects, you do big things as well, but what's the best thing that you like when you're performing live?
Pulling the rug out from under Tony.
Getting-
Okay, you've got a story too. Then what's your story?
I'm actually that seriously. That's my favorite part.
No, we don't improvise everything. We have structured pieces, and then on any given night, I'll throw it out the window.
Every once in a while, he will start playing something that is. We'll say we're going to do this piece. I have that piece queued up. And he'll start playing a completely different piece. And it's like,
And for how long?
all right, let's just go with this.
No, like we'll just do the piece that way.
We'll just do the piece that way with the music for the other piece. And I look at him and I'm like, really? We just do it.
Yeah, and I'm not the type to hold back. Like, we're being filmed, the recorder's on.
We don't care.
I'm gonna wing it. See what happens. Follow this, Tony.
Have you ever set it to wing it or thrown an extra few notes in there and he hasn't budged?
No,
You have to come back to wherever he's at.
Tony's brilliant. He'll follow it.
Brilliant.
Actually,
could you that's a great word. Could you repeat that?
Tony's brilliant.
Get that many times.
Yeah.
Do a loop.
Tony's a brilliant performer. As a front person, he'll listen and follow. So.
We have done with the full band a couple of times things where everybody will just start playing something, and I'll just reach into a folder and pull something out and match it to it. We love those moments.
Okay, brilliant is
We love
that's
those
up
moments,
there.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
That's a level of intelligence.
And we'll take a piece and completely flip it, or the probably one of my highlight stories of what I've just loved working on this was in the early stages. We were in the second album. Tony had emailed me the words to a piece, and I was very adamant. This is an aggressive piece. This is a very angry piece, and I kept reading it, and all I kept getting was that it was a very sad piece. So I told him that I wrote a really angry part, showed up, didn't, and played my really sweet, sad classical guitar part instead. And it was one of the most moving moments we've ever had, in the studio, because here he is all ready to be aggressive, and it was just sweet. To the point that even the engineer was teary-eyed. And it was just great to be this young kid and be completely right.
And how old were you when that happened?
Probably
20.
Maybe 20. Yeah, it was an interesting moment because it was a piece I had done. A lot of the pieces we do are pieces I've been doing for years, as a poet at features and stuff. And it was a piece I had done as this very sort of angry. It's a very political piece. And I used to do it as this very angry rant, and he kept going, no. That's not how this is.
And like any kid, I got my way.
And after listening to it, I was like, okay, let's try it that way. And I've never read it again the same way. Completely changed my reading and understanding of the poem. Those are the great moments. When it comes together as something. Sometimes people will say, and here's Tony Brown accompanied by music, and I hate that. I really hate that because that's not what this is.
It's not what it's about.
This is about the two of us and the four of us working together to create something independent, right. something that is bigger than what all of the pieces we do.
Synergy.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could give advice to up-and-coming artists, what would be something that you would want to tell them?
Well, for musicians and composers, it would be kind of universal, whether you're working with a poet or just anyone, of be diverse and open-minded, experiment with stuff, and always kind of pay attention to who you're with. You know, whether I'm writing something for a poem with Tony, writing something for a film director, it's, you know, take where they are. You know, because in general, for this here, the words are in a big way your substance. You know, he's telling a story, he's conveying a message, he's rallying support for something, and the music's just there to enhance that. So remain aware of that, you know, start with this and enhance that. Don't just do your own thing because you want to or anything like that, you know. Kind of take the direction, I guess.
It's an influence of and by the emotion from what he writes.
Now, in general, you're kind of conveying the same thought on your instrument that he would be, you know, with real words.
Yeah.
So one more question. I was walking with grandkids down the streets of Worcester a couple of years ago, the street fair, and you were hosting
Probably Start on the Street.
open air poetry. What
Yeah.
is your new venue named, and when is it?
We're
meet?
doing a new venue at a small community center. It's hard to describe because it's sort of a place where a lot of different groups related to social justice and economic inequality and things like that have gotten together and they formed a collective around a house.
A grassroots.
Yeah,
organization.
collective. It's called Stone Soup, and our
it's Stone
our
Soup?
venue is called Choice Words. And what we do is it's a straight up open mic, all ages, sober space. We bring refreshments in. We just started it this past Sunday, and the key thing that we'll be doing is every month there is a word. Like for instance, this next coming month, the word is power. And what we're going to do is we're going to we've let people know ahead of time. We're going to keep punching it. People will come in with poems related to the concept of power, and from that, we'll figure out, and we haven't figured it out yet, what process it'll do. We'll take a group of those poets, and they will be the feature for the night. So instead of having a featured performer, there will be a feature of the word, and it's
Featured theme.
yeah, a feature.
And they
theme
find out
tonight.
that night, or they find out...
They know the word now, so they should be writing and pulling their poems together. That night we'll decide what the feature looks like.
Wow.
So what we'll probably do is, what I'm thinking we might do, we haven't settled this yet because I do this with 2 other people, is we'll have everybody throw their names in a hat and we'll pull 6 or 7 names from the hat and say, okay, you guys are the feature slot with your poems on power. Wow. That's what we're going to do.
Very
So
nice, very
it's a
different.
communal, the feature becomes about the community as opposed to we're bringing in a star poet. It's like you guys are going to make this what it is.
Okay. And we'll hear more from Tony and Steve in a few minutes.
Great.
And that wraps up our show for the love of words. I'd like to thank our guest performers, and a special thank you to Mr. Philip Hisouris for helping us out with the format. Thank you to everyone at ECAT, to the Easton Shoveltown Cultural District, and the Ames Free Library for supporting poetry and the arts in Easton. And on behalf of everybody, thank you all very, very much. Thank you.
For my heart, it's too tough. C'est tout, basta, that's all, that's enough. C'est tout, it's French for that's all. Basta, basta, Italian for enough. I can't give you my heart, for my heart, it's too tough. C'est tout, basta, that's all. That's enough.